Now that the prop manipulator has been out for a little while, I figured I'd show you guys some of the things it is capable of, whether that is something as simple as just picking Peely up and placing him down in a different location, or giving this board its own custom breaking animation. This device is absolutely incredible. Hey everyone, this is Syntax, and today we are going to be taking a look at the new prop manipulator and some of the things that it is capable of doing. My plan is to show you all the examples that I have set up, and then afterwards go over the devices and the channels I hooked them up to make everything possible. But anyway, without further ado, here is 5 ways that you can use the new prop manipulator. The first thing you can do is now pick up / place down any and every prop in the game. For example, like I showed you in the intro, if you want to walk up to Peely and pick him up off the dryer and then go over to this table and place him down here, you can now do that. Now this is obviously a bare minimum task, picking up and placing down one prop, but to do something like this before we had the prop manipulator was either extremely difficult or just straight up impossible. You would have had to line up an explosive device so it only blew up Peely and then teleport yourself to a copy of the entire room where Peely was on the table, because there was no way to just manifest props, but now you can just pick them up and place them down as you please. Of course, this can be used on more than just singular props. I actually have this really botched model of a pump shotgun that I built a while back, and if I want to pick up this pump, if I pick it up, you'll see that it is now in my inventory. And obviously the entire pump is now gone off the wall. Similar to that, if I make my way over to these custom models of bandages that I made a while back, if I hold square on these to pick them up, you will see that they just go right into my inventory. I also have a couple more set up on this shelf right here, but you can see as I pick them up, they just go right into my inventory. Anyway, let's move on to the second thing. The second way I have you using the prop manipulator is to make custom doors, hatches, or crates. As you can see, if I work my way over to this custom crate that I made a little bit ago, when I open it, you can see that there is just a cult of teddy bears with knives. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and close that and just pretend we didn't see that. The third example I have set up for you guys is very cut and dry. It is pop-up jump scares. As you can see right there, that hallway is completely empty, but if I approach it, you will see that Trauma pops up, he jump scares me, and then he disappears. Very simple. The fourth thing I have to show you guys is actually the ability to upgrade / build new areas. Located inside this lovely bunker, I actually have the ability to build a fireplace, but as you can see right here, it says it requires 10 brick to build. I'm just gonna get the 10 brick from a wall over here because I don't have any other source. Once I've acquired the 10 brick, I can then go back to where I was able to build it, and if I hold square to just build this fireplace, you can see that there is now a fireplace here. Now, why I made it only take 10 brick to build all of that, I don't exactly know, but that's just an idea of what you could do with building / upgrading new areas with the correct crafting material. Anyway, the last example I have set up for you guys is actually more creative freedom with environmental interactions. Now, what on earth could I possibly mean by that? Well, let me explain. As you can see, I can actually pickaxe a bunch of props in this bunker because I have pickaxe damage turned on. However, with the prop manipulator, you can see that I can make certain props invincible. Like, no matter how much I hit this TV, it's never gonna break. I also don't have to make it invulnerable. I can customize how much health I want it to have. So, for example, this wall does not die to one shot, but I can make it so that the wall does if I want to. You now even have the ability to send signals by damaging props. You can see right here that if I hit this couch, the message pops up and it says, "Hey, don't touch my couch." The last example I have set up for this is actually my favorite. If I go up to this little wooden plank right here, you can see it's fully intact, but if I hit it, you can see that it actually breaks in two, and you can see a little bit of rubble from the wood. Yeah, it's pretty cool. In all seriousness though, this is one of my favorite things that I'm going to be doing a lot in the future, because just the fact that I can make it look like I split this board in half, it's just so cool. So those were the 5 examples that I had. Let's take a look now at how to actually set them up. Before I show you how to actually make any of this though, just remember that all of this is an illusion. None of it is actually really happening. We're just making it seem like certain things are happening by being very clever with our device usage. But anyway, let's talk about the picking up / placing down props. I have a button encompassing the Peely on the dryer that you can interact with one time. The interaction hold time is actually 1 second. There's no delay or reset delay, no trigger sounds. It's enabled at game start, and the interaction text is actually pick up Peely because you're picking up Peely. I gave it a relatively small interaction radius because, I mean, Peely is relatively small, channel, and I actually hooked this up to channel 1. Now, this button is actually going to be doing two things. The first thing it does is sends a signal to this prop manipulator to make Peely invisible. For whatever prop you're going to be picking up, you want to make sure the start hidden setting is set to false, and if it's only one prop, you don't have to worry about this setting right here. This setting is only used for when you want to hide or make more than one prop invisible, but in this case, it's just Peely, so we don't have to worry about it. Do not override the prop health, and then of course, I am going to hide this when receiving from the same channel I have hooked up on that button, which in this case is channel 1. Like I said, this button is doing two things. So the first thing it's doing is sending a signal to the prop manipulator to make this Peely invisible, and what it's doing is enabling the second button that we're going to be using to place down our Peely. This button is set up the exact same way as the other button. The only difference is it says place Peely instead of pick up because we're going to be placing it, and it is disabled at game start. You have to make sure that whatever you're going to be placing down is disabled at game start. So yeah, make sure this is just disabled on game start, and we're going to be enabling it from the same channel that is causing that other Peely to be invisible, which is channel 1. And then I have it set up so when we interact with it, it sends on channel 2, which then sends a signal to this prop manipulator that then makes the stuff visible. The only difference with this device is starts hidden is set to true, so that you can't actually see this Peely on the table until we click that button, and of course the show props is hooked up with channel 2. So yeah, really simple stuff. This Peely is visible, I walk up to him, I pick him up, I make him invisible, that button is now enabled, and I go over, press it, and then create the illusion that I just placed him down on the table. For the pump shotgun, it is a very similar concept. I have a button that is hooked up on channel 3. This just says pick up pump. It has a little bit bigger of an interaction radius, and it is enabled on game start. All this is doing is sending a signal to this prop manipulator to make all of these props invisible. There is one prop that I actually couldn't hide with it, and I think it is that little black piece on top of the nozzle right there. You see it right there? Yeah, I couldn't get that. Since I'm picking this up, I'm making sure that the start hidden setting is set on false, and then of course I just hide them when receiving from the same channel that that button is sending on, and then the extra prop manipulator that I had to use is literally the exact same thing, but it's set up so that it's just using one prop. The only other thing that's happening is I have an item granter with a pump shotgun inside of it that is hooked up on the same channel that makes those props invisible, so channel 3. And then of course all of these settings are going to be relative to how you want to orient the player's inventory, but the main thing is just granting them this pump shotgun on the same channel that is making all of those props invisible. So yeah, when I walk up to this pump shotgun, you can see that it says pick up pump. I'm gonna press this, it's gonna send on channel 3 to then grant me the pump and make all of those props invisible. I did have to readjust this a couple times because it kept making the wall invisible, but it shouldn't be too big of a problem. Just make sure you're placing these very meticulously. And with the bandages, I am doing the exact same thing. I am setting up a prop manipulator that hides them when receiving from a certain channel, and in this case it's actually 3 different channels, which I think is 4, 5, and 6. And then of course I have all these item granters that are hooked up on the same channels that are making the props invisible, and then when I pick up the bandages, it makes them invisible and puts them in my inventory. Of course, make sure starts hidden is set to false, and then all we're literally doing is just hiding the bandages and putting them in my inventory. Like I said earlier, doing stuff like this before required an immense amount of memory and was extremely painful to execute. Like if I wanted to pick up a bandage, I had to be teleported to an exact copy of this room where there wasn't a bandage there. If you weren't using something that had disappearing properties already, like objective devices or barriers, then this was extremely difficult to do. But now, since we have the prop manipulator, everything is so much easier. So yeah, that's picking up / placing down every prop in the game. Just get creative with it. I'm sure there is an immense amount that is possible that I have not covered in this video. Anyway, let's talk about this little crate that I have set up here that I can open and close now because of this device. This particular mechanic works with any custom doors, any custom latches, any custom crates, anything you could theoretically open that you have made out of separate parts, you can do this trick with. Now, I have 2 buttons set up here with the exact same interaction radius that do 2 different things. One of them says open box, and it is enabled on game start, and when I click this button, it sends a signal to channel 7, which then disables itself, which is important. When I click the open box button, what it's doing is sending 2 signals to 2 different prop manipulators. This first one is actually touching this part of the box right here because what I'm going to be doing is making it invisible. So as you can see, if I click on these settings, the start hidden is set to false, and then it says hide props when receiving from 7. So when I click that button, it's going to send a signal to this device to then hide the top of this box, and then it's sending a signal to this one up here. This is actually the top part of the box, so the start hidden is going to be set to true, and then when I click that open box button that is set up on channel 7, it is going to show this prop. For a more visual representation, you can see that the button says open box. When I click this, it's going to send a signal to channel 7 to make that top piece invisible and kind of give the illusion that it's moving upward, and then the closed box, I'll go over that right now. If you look closely, you can see the 2 buttons right there. This button in front is actually the close box button, and this button is disabled on game start. Of course, it says close box, and what it does is it enables when receiving from the same channel that is opening the box. So I'm using channel 7 to open the box. We're going to enable this, and this is sending on channel 8 that will also disable itself. What channel 8 does is the exact opposite of what channel 7 does. It makes this open version of the crate actually become invisible. You can see that it says hide props when receiving from channel 8. And then this closed version of the crate down here, it then shows the prop when receiving from channel 8. So when it's all thrown together, again, it looks like this. Our open box button is the only button that is enabled. It sends a signal on channel 7 to make that prop invisible and make this one up here visible. And then our close box button becomes enabled. The open one has been disabled. And then when I click this, it sends a signal to make this invisible and the closed version visible again. And then of course, my open box button is then usable again. So I can just continuously open and close this box however many times I want to. You don't have to make a closing animation for everything, but I just have it because this is super simple. Now, keep in mind the prop manipulator is not a very responsive device. If I spam click my square button, you can see that it doesn't open and close the box rapidly. It is slightly delayed. And of course, the more props you're either hiding or showing, it's going to be more and more delayed. This is just one prop, so it's not too bad, but it gets worse and worse with the more stuff you actually try to hide or show. But yeah, that's the custom crate. Let's move on to the jump scare. Now, this was actually more of a pain to set up than you might have initially thought. For some reason, when I was setting this up, one prop manipulator wasn't enough to hide trauma, so I actually have two that are hooked up on the exact same channels. I have a trigger that is invisible in-game here that can be triggered by the player. It can only be triggered once, and it is sending a signal on channel 11. Now, what channel 11 is doing is sending a signal to these prop manipulators to make all of the props encompassed inside of their zone visible. You can see start hidden is set to true, and then it says show props when receiving from channel 11. Of course, I'm making more than one prop actually pop up, so I have affect all objects in a zone set to yes, and then I just have these custom tiles set up here. You want to be careful with actually stretching this device when you have this setting on because it can mess with the hitbox, but otherwise you should be okay. So yeah, I run into this trigger, it sends a signal on channel 11 to make trauma appear, and then I have a trigger up here that is actually on a delay to make him invisible again. There's a trigger that triggers when receiving from 11, and when triggered, it sends on channel 12 1 second later. You can see that there's actually a 1 second delay on it, and all that's doing is making all the props encompassed inside of the zone invisible again. So you can see start hidden is set to true, but then I'm going to hide the props when receiving from channel 12. So when I walk into this trigger, it's going to send a signal on channel 11 to make all of the props inside of the zone visible, and then 1 second later, all of the props inside of those zones will be invisible again. I also put a speaker on the same channel that makes the props visible, because if you're going to have a pop-up jump scare, you probably want to have a sound associated, but I mean, I guess you don't have to if you don't want to. But yeah, super simple. That's pop-up jump scares. The fourth thing I had on the list was actually crafting / creating new areas, and this one's a little more complicated than the other ones. Whatever area you're going to be creating / crafting, you want to have a prop manipulator that is set to have all the props inside of it hidden. And of course, you're going to be showing these when receiving from a certain channel, which in my case is channel 10. Now, I have a conditional button here that requires 10 brick for me to send a signal using it. The settings on this are kind of complicated, but basically you just want to make some interaction text for when you actually have all of the items, and then of course some interaction text if you're missing the items. You saw earlier in the video, it said requires 10 brick when I didn't have 10 brick, and then when I did, it said build fireplace. I have this thing disabling after use, and remain unlock after activation is also off. I have it showing the key items so you know that it's a brick you need. I don't know what the item slots do, I'm not going to lie to you, because I don't use the conditional button very often, but I know the key items required is 10, so however many items you need, you can adjust this to be appropriate, I guess. You want to consume the key items, you want to have all of them consumed at once, and then I have this enabled on game start, and of course it's not visible. And then when it's activated, it is sending a signal on channel 10, which is making everything encompassed inside of this zone, which is just the fireplace and all its amenities, visible. But yeah, I need 10 brick to build a fireplace. Once I have the 10 brick, I can then go up and hold square, and then it will make the fireplace appear, giving me the illusion that I built it. Obviously, the more complicated the crafting recipe, the more conditional buttons you're going to have, and it just becomes a whole jumbled mess. But you can pretty much build / manifest or craft anything now, which is really cool. That is pretty much everything, but we still have to talk about my personal new favorite concept, which is how much freedom we have with environmental interaction. There's actually a setting on the prop manipulator that allows you to adjust the health of whatever prop it is attached to, which is insane and it has so much potential. And then of course there's channels associated with the health it might have. You have restore health when receiving from, on damaged, and on destroyed. So for the TV that I have set up, I literally just have a prop manipulator that has the prop health set to invulnerable, and then no matter how many times I pickaxe this TV, it's not gonna break. If we go over to this wall that I broke in one shot, it's literally just a prop manipulator, but the prop health is set to 50, and since my base pickaxe damage is 50, I broke it in one shot. There's also a prop manipulator attached to the couch, and it actually sends a signal when it gets damaged. You can see it says on damaged, transmit on 9, and then it actually restores health when receiving from the same channel. So when you damage this, it actually heals itself. If you remember, when I actually hit the couch, a message did pop up that said, hey, don't touch my couch, which I just did with a HUD message device. You can see it shows when receiving from the same channel, which is channel 9. But yeah, the fact that I can send messages by damaging things and this couch will just never break, so it's technically also an infinite resource. Like, that's so crazy to me. And the very last thing we have to talk about, which is also my personal favorite use of this, it is the broken board illusion that I showed you. So what I'm doing here is actually taking one singular prop, making that prop invisible, and then making its broken version visible, which I'm sure you could have guessed. So this board that I got from the Outdoor Residential Prop Gallery, I went ahead and I placed this thing down right where it's placed. As you can see, it's right there. I then hooked up a prop manipulator that had the start hidden setting set to false, and because it's just one prop, I had this set to no. The prop's health is invulnerable, so I don't actually destroy it. I just want to make it disappear, and then it hides the prop when receiving from 13, and I'm sending a signal on 13 by damaging it. So basically when I hit the prop, it sends a signal because it got damaged, it sends it to 13, and then that hides it. The next thing I did was built a broken version of this wooden plank, which is actually 5 individual pieces. You can see there's the 2 larger one, and then there's like 3 specks of wood. I took the 2 bigger pieces that aren't hidden by the initial plank, and I associated them with the prop manipulators. The settings on these have start hidden set to true, and then of course I'm going to be showing them from the same channel that is hiding my initial board, which is channel 13. So we have this board, it's set up to send a signal when it is damaged on channel 13 that will make it invisible, and then make those 2 other smaller pieces visible, and if it's all put together, it just looks like that. A key part of making this look smooth is making sure that everything stays relatively the same length. You can see when I break this board, it doesn't look like it grows or shrinks at all, which is done on purpose and is very important in making this look good. And with that, I think that's all the examples I had set up for the prop manipulator. In summary, this device is insane. I barely even scratched the surface with this video for what this device is actually capable of doing, but hopefully after watching it, you've been inspired and are going into creative and testing out everything for yourself. And I know all the examples I showed weren't that in depth, but my main goal was just to show you what the device is capable of and some pretty simple ways you could use it. But anyway, that is everything I have for you guys today. I really do hope this video helped you out, and yeah, this has been Syntax. Later.